She offered herself as a worker without pay. But the cowboy gave more than work. Emily Harper shivered alone on the deserted train platform, snow biting her cheeks, the last train disappearing into the blizzard. Just when hope seemed lost, a lone cowboy appeared on his black Mustang. John McCabe saw her fear, his calm eyes piercing the storm. "Ma'am, you'll freeze," he said, draping his coat around her trembling shoulders. He lifted her onto his horse, shielding her from the unforgiving wind. Later, in a warm cabin, tea steaming and fire crackling, they shared past losses. His quiet scars mirrored hers. "I was left too," he whispered. With a steady hand at the door, he ensured her safety. "You're safe here." In the wild, harsh West, sometimes kindness and quiet protection are the greatest acts of love. Amidst the fierce blizzard, Emily Harper shivered alone across the desolate, snowy plain. The swirling white snow settling over her tangled brown hair and fragile shoulders. From afar, the silhouette of John McCabe on his black Mustang emerged faintly visible through the all-consuming white storm, the dim moonlight glinting on every snowflake. He moved slowly, watching the girl trembling in the biting wind, then stopped nearby, draping his thick coat over her shoulders. In his calm yet protective gaze, Emily suddenly felt a flicker of hope, her fear giving way to a sense of relief, believing that she would no longer be left alone. Part 1. The first moment of salvation. The blizzard outside the plains still raged, but the small wooden cabin appeared like a warm island amid the sea of ice. John McCabe stepped onto the snow-covered ground, exhaling a cloud of warm breath, his hand gripping the horse's reins tightly. His eyes remained fixed on Emily Harper, shivering in the ferocious storm, her petite shoulders trembling with each gust of icy wind. Her thin coat flapped wildly in the wind, her tangled hair matted with snow lips tinged blue, and hands curled tightly against the biting cold. John approached slowly, each step deliberate and steady, his gaze calm yet filled with unwavering determination. He bent down, draping his thick coat over Emily's shoulders, enveloping her like armor against the all-consuming white storm. The girl looked up at him, eyes wide, with a mixture of astonishment and disbelief, as if she couldn't imagine that in this harsh western land, someone could care for a vulnerable woman like her. Am I okay?" Emily whispered, her voice trembling, blending with the howl of the wind outside. John did not answer immediately with words. He gently looped his arm around her waist, lifting her from the snow-laden ground. The warmth of his body radiated to her through every careful gesture. Emily closed her eyes for a moment, inhaled deeply, and relaxed, allowing John to guide her through the deep snow to the only nearby shelter, his isolated cabin on the plain, the fire already smoldering inside. Inside the cabin revealed a completely different world. The flickering flames from the fireplace cast warm patches of light across the wooden walls, standing in stark contrast to the freezing storm outside. The scent of pine smoke and burning wood mingled with the damp aroma of melting snow on her coat. Emily felt her body gradually warming, the numbness from the blizzard dissolving with each breath. John set her gently on a wooden chair, carefully wrapping a thick blanket around her shoulders, allowing her heartbeat to stabilize. He bent down, looking straight into Emily's eyes, his voice deep but soothing. "Take it slow. The storm out there is fierce." Emily looked at the steaming cup of tea on the table, warmth spreading through her hands, and nodded faintly silently, thanking the man before her. In that moment, the little cabin became a world of its own. Outside raged the blizzard, but inside there was only tenderness, warmth, and peace. Emily closed her eyes, savoring the crackle of the fire, the heat from the blanket, and the soothing warmth of the tea spreading through her body. John stood nearby, watching her, sensing every tremor of her small frame, silently vowing that no one should endure such cold and loneliness in this harsh western land. After a while, Emily opened her eyes, looking at John once more, her gaze cautious, yet filled with newfound trust. Thank you, she said softly, like a gentle breeze. John only nodded, saying nothing, but in his eyes, Emily saw absolute protection, a silent promise that she would be safe through the night and through any storm to come. The cabin, small yet cozy, radiated life in every detail. The blazing fireplace, the steaming cup of tea, the thick wool blanket enveloping the girl and John, standing silently beside her like a steadfast rock amidst the snowstorm. Emily felt her heartbeat steadying the tremors, fading, replaced by warmth and trust. John did not hurry to sit. He walked to a wooden shelf, taking a few extra coats and placing them near Emily as if to offer her options if needed. Every movement was deliberate, careful, and full of consideration. Emily watched him, sensing a patience and gentleness rarely seen in anyone before. Her heart, hardened by past hardships, skipped a small beat, realizing that there were still good people in the world. Amid the flickering firelight and the wind howling outside the windows, two strangers became strangely close. Emily quietly recounted her arduous journey, her fears of being abandoned at the desolate train station. John listened without interruption, his calm eyes understanding every ounce of pain in her story. He did not only hear with his ears, but with his heart, feeling every anxious beat, every trembling fear of Emily. After a long while, Emily sighed, exhaustion spreading through her body, but no longer the bone-chilling cold. She leaned into the blanket, looking at John with a gentle, slightly hesitant gaze. Are you always like this?" John merely smiled softly, saying nothing, but that smile, his silent presence, was enough to make Emily feel safe, making the storm outside seem no longer frightening. John rested his hand on the table, touching the steaming cup of tea, inhaling deeply, then turned back to look at Emily. He understood that this moment was not merely about rescuing her from the cold outside, but saving her from the sense of loneliness and abandonment, a feeling that could erode the heart faster than any blizzard. Emily, sitting quietly in the blanket, watched the fire, feeling her heartbeat synchronize with the man before her. Here, in this tiny cabin amid the harsh western plains, she felt something for the first time: true safety. John moved by the fireplace, stirred the tea, and placed it in front of Emily, gently reminding her, "Drink slowly. Your body needs to warm up gradually." She smiled, warmth flooding her chest, the tremors on her body gradually melting away with the heat from the tea. Emily realized that for the first time in days, she no longer felt alone, no longer felt adrift in the storm-lashed west. The cabin became silent, with only the crackle of the fire and the wind slipping through the window crevices. John sat in a corner, still watching Emily, but the space between them vanished. Words were unnecessary. Their mere presence created a feeling of warmth, safety, and tenderness. Emily closed her eyes, enjoying each breath, each wave of heat, feeling the protection and gentleness John offered. Time seemed to slow, as if outside the fierce blizzard, the world had shrunk to this small cabin. The flickering fire, the steaming tea, and two people who, though just met, had connected deeply through kindness, tenderness, and a flicker of newfound hope. Emily felt sheltered, protected, and for the first time after days of shivering, she exhaled in relief, feeling a warmth she had never known. This moment of salvation was not merely John bringing her into the cabin, not just the thick coat or blanket. It was his silent presence, his gentle gaze, the heat from the tea and fire, the feeling of trust that she would never have to face the harsh Western world alone again. Emily looked at John, her eyes glistening, but full of hope, silently telling herself that perhaps she had just met someone who could make her heart feel at peace. And while the blizzard continued to rage inside the cabin, there was only the fire, the warmth, and two hearts just met, but already finding each other. A perfect moment of salvation, warm, safe, and tender, opening the door to the days ahead where Emily would slowly learn to trust, to love, and to feel true protection from John. Part 2. Sharing a Meal and the Past. The flames from the fireplace danced across the old wooden planks of the cabin, casting warm patches of light that seeped through the quiet space. John McCabe placed a small wooden table in the center of the cabin. On it, a few slices of dry bread, some cheese, and a steaming cup of hot tea. The faint aroma of bread mingled with the scent of burning wood, filling every corner of the room, creating an unusual sense of intimacy and safety. Emily Harper, still shivering from the blizzard, sat down, wrapping the blanket tightly around her shoulders, her eyes weary yet curious as she gazed at the simple yet comforting food before her. John gently pushed the cup of tea toward her, the warmth spreading into her hands. "Drink slowly. Your body needs to warm up gradually," he said, his voice deep, calm, and gentle. Emily nodded slightly, lifting her gaze to the flickering firelight reflecting on John's face, feeling a profound sense of peace in every gesture he offered. She took a sip of the hot tea, warmth spreading through her, chasing away the lingering cold and fear from the storm outside. The cabin fell into silence, save for the crackle of the fire and Emily's gradually steadying breaths. John sat down beside her, lifting a slice of bread, biting it gently, and holding it out to her. "Eat. No need to be polite," he said, his eyes attentive. Emily smiled softly, picking up the bread, sensing the sincerity and gentleness in his actions. The feeling of being cared for, protected, and watched over spread through her, making her small, hardened heart, once worn by loneliness and loss, beat with warmth again. As they ate, Emily could not hide her curiosity. She looked at John, her eyes a mixture of hesitancy and a desire to share. Have you ever been alone like me?" John did not answer immediately. He quietly sipped his tea, his gaze fixed on the flames, as if carefully choosing his words. After a moment, he exhaled softly, looking at her with calm but gentle eyes. "I've been left behind too," he said, just loud enough for her to hear. Not a sound, louder than the wind slipping through the window frame. Emily's eyes widened in surprise. and her heart skipped a soft beat. She no longer felt alone. That silent sharing had built a subtle bridge between them. The cold outside was no longer as frightening as the loneliness she had carried, and thanks to John, Emily realized she did not have to bear that solitude alone. John shared a little more about the days he had endured the cold, the losses he had tried to bury deep inside. Emily listened, emotions long suppressed rising to the surface. She told him about the days she had crossed the blizzard, the fear of having no support, the sense of abandonment at the desolate train station. Every story she told was met with John's uninterrupted attention, free of judgment, only silent empathy and warm eyes. Every word, glance, and small gesture, the slice of bread, the cup of tea, or John's quiet presence, gradually built trust within Emily. She felt gentleness, protection, and most of all, the sense that her heart could open, could feel goodness without hesitation. The trembling within her softened, replaced by warmth spreading throughout her body. The meal slowly passed, the fire still flickering, and the storm outside began to subside. Emily no longer felt fear or chill. Instead, she felt a deep connection, a subtle yet strong trust that she was being protected and that John would not leave her alone. Within the small cabin, they shared not only food, but also pain loss and a flicker of newfound hope. John quietly observed Emily, his gaze gentle yet calm, noting the change in her. She was beginning to trust him, beginning to feel safe, and for the first time in days, she felt a true warmth emanating from both body and heart. She leaned back into the blanket, closed her eyes, exhaling in relief, her heart softening, filled with comfort. The cabin was no longer merely a refuge from the blizzard. It had become a sanctuary for the soul, a place where two strangers had just met, yet discovered empathy, where gentleness and kindness could heal emotional wounds. Emily looked at John, her eyes glistening, but filled with hope, sensing that this moment marked the beginning of a new trust, a peace she had never experienced before. John gently placed another slice of bread in front of Emily, his eyes calm but warm. "Eat. No need to be polite," he said softly. Emily smiled, taking the bread warmth spreading through her body, along with the belief that she would no longer be alone. Amid the flickering fire, the wind outside, the steaming tea, and the scent of burning wood, Emily felt protection, tenderness, and a subtle connection with John. This moment was not just about sharing a meal or past stories. It was a spiritual rescue, a quiet yet powerful act that allowed Emily to open her heart and feel warmth and safety she had thought lost forever in the harsh western plains. As the meal ended, the fire continued to flicker, and John remained quietly beside her, a steadfast presence. Emily looked at him, her gaze filled with newfound trust, realizing that for the first time in days, she no longer felt alone. The second moment of salvation, not through heroic deeds, but through presence, gentleness, and empathy, softened her heart, readying it to receive hope, love, and protection she had long sought. Emily took a deep breath, closed her eyes, feeling her heartbeat align with John's, and realized that this moment would remain etched in her memory forever. A moment where warmth, safety, and tenderness became a bridge between two people, between loneliness and newfound trust, between the western blizzard and a heart just rescued. Part 3. Realizing Feelings. Moonlight filtered through the cabin window, falling onto the wooden floor and casting a soft glow over Emily Harper's tangled brown hair, highlighting the tired yet resilient features of her face. The fire in the fireplace still crackled, radiating warmth and dancing light, creating a space both intimate and magical, as if time outside had stopped. The blizzard continued to roar beyond the cabin walls, but inside, everything moved slowly and quietly, enveloped in tenderness and warmth surrounding the two of them. Emily sat back in the chair, still clutching the blanket, but no longer shivering as she had upon entering the cabin. Her eyes rested on John McCabe, who stood by the fireplace, his gaze calm, yet full of care and protection. She suddenly realized that in every gesture, every glance, and every deliberate action of his, there was more than simple gentleness. It was genuine kindness, a silent protection offered to her, someone the outside world had abandoned. Emily exhaled softly, a strange feeling spreading through her heart. Her chest felt tender. Her heartbeat quickened, not from fear, but from a new emotion she had never experienced, safety mingled with warmth. A gentle feeling her heart seemed to have long forgotten. She realized she was beginning to trust John, and with that trust, something subtle yet powerful began to grow. An emotion, a feeling both hesitant and rising within her affection. John moved closer, placing his hand on the chair's edge, his gaze still on Emily, but respecting her space. He sensed the slight flutter in her heart, but remained silent. His mere presence, his quiet and deliberate stillness, was enough for her to understand he had not only saved her from the blizzard, but also from the loneliness and cold within. Emily took a deep breath, her eyes locking with John's, her heart racing not with worry, but with a dawning realization. In this wild and harsh world, there were still gentle people, still love that could bloom, even amid the storm. A soft, tentative smile, not yet complete, but enough to soothe her weary heart, curved on her lips, a quiet whisper to herself. Perhaps you are the one my heart has been searching for. The small cabin now seemed alive, not because of the fire or the warmth, but because of the quiet yet powerful emotion slowly forming between them. Emily felt safety, warmth, and above all, the subtle connection John's kindness provided. Her heart opened a new door, allowing love to take root, not hurriedly, but quietly, gently, like the moonlight streaming through the window, illuminating every corner of her soul. John sat down across from Emily, gently holding her hand to ensure she wasn't cold. In that single gesture, she felt complete care and tenderness, like an invisible bridge between their hearts. Emily looked into his eyes and saw the quiet yet profound love within. And in that moment, she realized for the first time in many lonely days, she felt safe, not just in body, but in soul. The fire flickered, the moonlight streamed through the window, and something delicate began to bloom inside the cabin, love quietly emerging. Emily said nothing, only smiled softly, closing her eyes for a moment, feeling her heartbeat sync with John's, sensing warmth, gentleness, and a faint glimmer of hope that even in the harsh western plains, love could quietly but deeply take root. In those silent moments between the moonlight and the fire, words were unnecessary. It was enough for both of them to realize they were no longer alone, that empathy and kindness could guide the way for love to blossom gentle yet strong amid the wild west, the blizzard, and the challenges of life outside. Emily tilted her head toward John, a shy smile on her lips, her eyes sparkling silently, thanking him for appearing for the gentleness and kindness he had brought. And John, with his calm, tender gaze, knew that this moment marked a new beginning, where feelings began to blossom, where two hearts had found each other in the harsh west, between snowstorms and the soft glow of the moon. The small cabin now radiated a quiet power warmth, the stirrings of love, and a sense of safety flowing through Emily's body and soul, allowing her for the first time in many days of shivering to feel her heart at peace, tender, and open to new hopes. Part 4. Confrontation with the town. The wind outside the cabin still swept across the dry grasses, carrying the scent of cold earth and melting snow. Emily Harper stood close to the window, her gaze following the figures approaching from the town. Sheriff Thompson at the forefront, followed by a few curious townspeople, their expressions tinged with suspicion. The dim light spilling from the cabin reflected on the snow, casting interwoven patches of light and shadow, highlighting the contrast between the warmth inside and the harsh, cold scrutiny of the world outside. John McCabe stepped out the door, positioning himself in front of Emily, his gaze steady yet sharp. Sheriff Thompson, a large man in a stiff coat, eyes stern and lips pressed tight, looked directly at John with visible annoyance. "McCabe, she's not allowed here. That's the law of this town." The townspeople murmured behind him, glancing at Emily with whispered speculation, as if reminding her of her vulnerable place within a strict and judgmental society. Emily took a step back, clutching the blanket, but her eyes no longer showed fear. Instead, they rested on John, and in that gaze was a nascent trust. John drew a deep breath, feeling the cold from the snow and the pressure from the outside world, yet he remained steadfast, a rock amid the storm. He lifted his chin, voice calm but firm. "She will stay here. I will protect her." The sheriff raised an eyebrow, voice stern. "McCabe, you have no authority to decide. This town has rules and she has broken them." The townspeople murmured, shaking their heads, suspicion focused on Emily. Her heart raced, but not from fear. This time it was from the warmth radiating from John, from his unwavering determination to protect her despite every external pressure. John stepped forward, fully shielding Emily, his hand resting on the butt of his gun, but not drawing it. His voice was steady, commanding. "Rules aren't always right. Sometimes justice means protecting the vulnerable, keeping them safe. Emily has harmed no one. She needs shelter, and I will make sure she gets it." Sheriff Thompson frowned, but noticed John's calm, resolute gaze and the warmth emanating from the cabin, which caused some of the townspeople to hesitate, quietly observing. Emily stood behind John, feeling the strength of his heartbeat, the determination in his gestures and eyes. Her trust in him had become unshakable, and for the first time she felt she would not face society alone. John continued, his voice deep and weighty. "If anyone has a problem with this, look at her. She is afraid. She needs help. That is all she deserves. I will not let anyone harm her." The cabin light illuminated the sheriff's stern face, allowing him too to sense John's resolve, a resolve born from kindness and justice, not authority or force. Emily felt her heartbeat slow, and in John's eyes, she saw a new hope. Not a hope for complete acceptance from the town, but a hope for protection for a man standing beside her, shielding her against every prejudice, every rigid rule. In that moment, she realized that love and kindness were not merely gentle feelings. They were strength, protection, and justice in a harsh world. After a tense pause, Sheriff Thompson finally nodded lightly, saying nothing more. The townspeople gradually withdrew, curiosity mingled with caution, leaving Emily and John their own space where she was truly safe. Emily inhaled deeply, her shoulders relaxing, warmth and peace spreading through her body. She looked at John, her eyes full of gratitude and a steadfast trust, realizing that for the first time in many days, she would not face the cold, harsh world alone. The cabin fell into quiet again, yet the space now felt alive through the connection between the two of them. John stood beside Emily, his gaze calm yet protective, and she felt safety, warmth, and above all, a nascent hope. This confrontation with the town was not merely a test against the outside world. It was a testament to kindness, justice, and the quiet strength of love, which can protect, redeem, and inspire trust in hearts once hardened. Emily closed her eyes briefly, exhaling softly, feeling her heartbeat synchronize with John's strong pulse. She knew that no matter what lay beyond within this small cabin, she had found a safe haven, a protector, and a hope that would guide her through every storm of the Western Plains. Part 5. The Test of Honor. Night had fallen, but the Western Plains still held a harshness in the air. The blizzard had finally subsided, leaving only the wind whistling through the cracks of the cabin window, a subtle reminder of the dangers outside. Inside, the firelight danced across the old wooden planks, illuminating every corner, creating a space both warm and solitary. Emily Harper sat by the window, eyes tracing the pale moonlit meadow, still shivering from the storm. Yet a new trust glimmered in her gaze, a trust in the protection and gentleness of John McCabe. John stood before the fireplace, adjusting a scarf, his eyes steady but sharp. Deep inside, Sheriff Thompson's words and the judging gazes of the townspeople lingered. Prejudice, rigid rules, skeptical looks, all were testing him, presenting a difficult choice: turn his back on society's pressure or protect the vulnerable following his conscience and honor. He stepped closer to Emily, his gaze soft as he looked at her. The storm has eased, but it's still dangerous out there, he said, voice low but resolute. Emily looked at him, her eyes filled with concern, yet tinged with hope. You won't leave me, will you? She asked, her voice small and trembling. John bent down, placing his hand gently on her shoulder, his gaze calm and tender. No, he replied. I will stay. No one, no prejudice will make me abandon you. Emily felt the steady beat of his heart beneath his hand. A sense of safety spread through her, reassuring the lingering fear and loneliness from the storm outside. Her heart began to soften, and the trust in human kindness and fairness that shone in John's eyes made her feel for the first time in days that she was fully protected, not just physically, but spiritually. John moved around the cabin, pausing at the wooden table, gazing out the window. He knew protecting Emily wasn't simply shielding her through the night. It was a test of his own honor. A Western cowboy, living amidst a rigid and judgmental society, sometimes faced choices where conscience and societal pressure clashed. And John had made his choice. He stood with Emily protecting her with kindness, determination, and the honor he had valued for so long. Emily watched him, her eyes reflecting a budding hope. She understood that John had not merely appeared to rescue her from the cold. He was standing against the world, against prejudice and strict laws to protect her. Her trust in him was now solid, not only because he had saved her, but because he had dared to stand for justice, for kindness, and for humanity. John returned standing near Emily, his gaze calm but filled with meaning. He placed a steaming cup of tea in front of her, the rising vapor carrying its warm aroma, and said, "Drink. Tonight we'll get through it together." Emily looked at the cup, feeling warmth spread through her hands and body. In that quiet moment, she realized that gentleness and kindness could be stronger than any law, and that a cowboy could be a perfect shelter for a vulnerable heart even in the harsh western plains. The fire crackled and danced across the wooden planks, creating a gentle rhythm as if echoing the heartbeat of two souls beginning to synchronize. Emily felt her heartbeat merge with John's, and a new feeling emerged, a budding hope that no matter the storms outside, she would never be alone again. John sat beside Emily, his gaze calm yet tender. He gently placed his hand over hers. No words were needed. That simple gesture alone conveyed protection, care, and genuine kindness. This moment was not just about John staying. It was proof of honor, steadfastness, and the human capacity to protect the vulnerable in a harsh, challenging world. Emily met John's eyes, tears rolling down her cheeks, not from fear or sadness, but from emotion, sensing the steadiness, tenderness, and complete goodness he offered. She realized this moment marked a turning point where budding love emerged, where kindness became strength, and where hope was reborn amidst the western blizzard. John stood and walked to the window, gazing out over the pale meadow under the moonlight, his heart brimming with determination. He knew not everyone would understand his choice, nor approve of it, but he did not regret it. Protecting Emily was part of his honor and conscience, and he would not yield to any pressure or prejudice. Emily, wrapped in the blanket, took a deep breath, feeling her heartbeat slow, her heart filled with warmth, trust, and hope. She knew from this moment onward she was no longer alone. There was someone by her side protecting her, believing that kindness and justice could matter more than rigid laws. The night passed quietly in the cabin firelight and moonlight blending to create a space both warm and sacred. Emily leaned into the blanket, closing her eyes, feeling every warmth, every gentle gesture, every heartbeat synchronized with John's. Another moment of spiritual salvation had occurred, not through bold actions or loud declarations, but through presence, kindness, and the steadfastness of a Western cowboy. The warmth, safety, and hope spread through Emily's body, her heart softer than ever. She realized that even in the harsh Western plains, kindness, justice, and gentle protection could redeem a heart, and that hope would always bloom even on the darkest nights. The cabin grew silent, with only the crackle of the fire and the even breathing of two people. John sat close to Emily, his gaze steady and protective, and Emily knew that for the first time in many days of shivering, she had found a safe haven, not just physically, but spiritually. Hope, kindness, and budding love filled her heart, promising peaceful and happy days ahead. Part 6. Emotional Intimacy. By the crackling fireplace in the cabin, the dancing flames cast shifting light and shadows across the faces of Emily Harper and John McCabe, creating a private world amid the wild western plains. The wind outside the window had softened, leaving only the gentle sounds of wood popping in the fire and the rising warmth from a steaming cup of tea on the wooden table. This cozy space seemed to soothe the last lingering tremors in Emily's body after the recent storm. Emily leaned back in her chair, wrapping the blanket tightly around her shoulders, eyes following the flickering fire, feeling a sense of peace quietly settling in her heart for the first time. She took a deep breath, sensing warmth radiating from John beside her, from the firelight and from the hot tea. Emily lifted her head slightly, her gaze quietly studying John. "Aren't you afraid of being alone?" she asked, her voice trembling but curious. John turned to her, his gaze calm yet tender, as if reading every lingering thought and worry within her. He smiled softly, his voice low but warm. "Of course. But sometimes loneliness teaches us to treasure moments like this." Emily smiled faintly, feeling the gentle warmth of his words spread through her, soothing the emotional wounds she had carried for so long. She began to open up, speaking of her days of solitude, her fears, when no one seemed to care, when the world seemed to turn its back on her. Each story, each memory emerged softly, but filled with emotion. John listened without interruption or judgment, letting his calm, steady gaze convey empathy and comfort. Emily felt seen, understood, and for the first time in many days, her heart was no longer swept away by the storms outside. It was held warm and gentle. John lifted his teacup, sipped, and set it down, his eyes still on Emily. "Not everyone can understand those fears," he said, voice low, but kind. "But what matters is that you no longer have to face them alone." Emily felt the weight of his words, the sincerity in his gaze, and warmth flooded her body. She rested her head against the chair, inhaling deeply, as if savoring the invisible but unwavering protection John provided. The space between them grew intimate, a closeness that required no words. The firelight highlighted every expression, every gesture, creating a subtle yet profound connection. Emily gradually opened up more, sharing her past fears and losses, the small pains, the moments she felt helpless and alone. John listened, his eyes calm but filled with kindness and empathy. Emily realized this moment was not just about sharing her fears. It was a journey of learning to trust, learning to open her heart to someone who could protect her without judgment, learning to feel love and tenderness amid the harsh western plains. Her body relaxed, her heartbeat syncing with John's, and for the first time in many days, she felt peace within her soul. John gently lifted the blanket around Emily's shoulders, his gaze steady but tender, saying nothing, letting his presence speak. Emily smiled softly, her heart warming, feeling healing and tenderness, and the trust that she had found someone to rely on, someone willing to protect her and accompany her through every storm. The moments by the fireplace stretched in the cabin quiet, with only the firelight and the rising warmth permeating the space. Emily looked at John, her eyes glistening with gratitude, realizing that the affection blossoming in her unhurried and unobtrusive was enough to soothe the long-formed emotional scars. John whispered softly, "Through nights like these, you won't have to be afraid anymore." Emily nodded, feeling every word, every breath, every steady glance he offered. That emotional intimacy, the healing born of kindness and gentleness, had connected their hearts, creating an invisible yet enduring bond between them. The night passed slowly, firelight flickering tender gazes and gentle gestures easing the chill outside. Emily knew she had found a sanctuary, not only for her body, but for her soul. This emotional closeness, quiet yet profound, had opened a new chapter where Emily could learn to trust, to love, and to feel the warmth of budding affection amid the wild western plains. Part 7. Revealing a deep past. The blizzard outside the cabin had finally subsided, leaving only the soft rustle of wind through the window cracks whispering like the long sighs of the wild western plains. The candle on the wooden table flickered, casting a warm glow that traced Emily Harper's delicate features, reflecting emotions both fragile and profound. The cabin had grown silent, leaving only the two of them, the fire, the candlelight, and the meaningful stillness between them. Emily sat back in her chair, her gaze fixed on John McCabe. She still trembled slightly, but fear had given way to safety and trust. Her heartbeat seemed to align with his, and for the first time she realized she could open her heart and share the deepest fears she had long kept hidden. John bent down his gaze, calm but full of emotion, meeting Emily's eyes as if to convey all his sincerity and empathy. He exhaled softly, voice low and gentle, as if telling a story, not just for her, but also as a release for himself. Emily, I've been left behind too. The first time I truly felt loneliness was when those I trusted most turned their backs, leaving me alone in a storm just like the one you face today. Emily froze, eyes wide, lips trembling. Tears welled up as she listened to his story, a story she had thought belonged only to herself. The losses, the abandonment, the profound loneliness John had endured stirred deep empathy within her, as if two long, lonely hearts had found each other in this quiet, weighty moment. John continued, voice low, but charged with feeling. I learned to stand firm to protect myself, but sometimes the heart still remembers the hands that did not hold it, the faces that turned away that I once trusted. Emily felt a lump in her throat, a mixture of pain and reverence filling her. She suddenly understood that the gentleness, protection, and kindness John offered her did not stem merely from duty, but from his deepest experiences, the losses and loneliness that had shaped his heart. Emily exhaled softly, tears streaming down her cheeks, but no longer from fear. They were tears of emotion, of deep empathy, of seeing a reflection of her own soul in another. She grasped John's hand, feeling the warmth of his steady palm, sensing that this moment had erased the boundaries between their hearts. They were no longer strangers, side by side, but kindred spirits finding solace in each other's pain and loss. The candle flickered, the fire crackled, casting shimmering shadows across the wooden walls. Emily leaned back, eyes closed, still holding John's hand. In the gentle silence, their hearts beat in unison, sharing deep empathy and comfort. She felt every breath, every subtle movement of his body, and in that moment, her long-held loneliness melted away. John inhaled deeply, eyes still on Emily, and continued sharing the hardships he had endured. Dark, solitary nights, footsteps lost in the wild world, and the feeling of abandonment he once thought would never heal. Emily listened in silence, letting each word sink into her soul. letting the empathy and emotion flow through her being. She realized that it was John's pain and loss that had forged the kindness and protection she now received. No words, no heroic acts were necessary. Simply his openness, revealing his deepest past, was enough for Emily to understand that she was seen, understood, and loved in the truest sense. Tears slid gently down her cheeks, mingling with the flickering firelight, creating a moment both aching and tender. She squeezed his hand lightly, conveying part of her trust, part of her gratitude, and showing that she was ready to open her heart share herself and face the remaining nights alongside him. John gently placed his hand over hers, his gaze steady, yet filled with empathy and tenderness. This moment, the flickering candlelight, the crackling fire, the soft wind outside stood as a testament to the power of empathy, to the way two lonely hearts could find each other in the harsh western plains. Emily closed her eyes, exhaling softly, feeling every heartbeat merge with John's. In this quiet moment, the loneliness that had haunted her for so long vanished, replaced by comfort, understanding, and deep connection. She knew that for the first time in many days, she had found someone who truly understood her pain, someone who could empathize, share, and protect her, not just physically, but emotionally as well. The firelight, the candle, and the gentle silence of the cabin engraved this moment when Emily and John truly connected on a spiritual level, sharing their deepest pains and giving each other the comfort they had longed for. The profound empathy, the emotion, and the trust forming in Emily's heart promised that from this moment on, she would never be alone again. She had found a companion protector and confidant to face the wild storms of the West by her side. Part 8. Tying the bonds of affection. Dawn filtered through the cabin window, the pale golden light illuminating the morning dew on the wooden table. The warm cabin had grown quiet and gentle, as if the entire western plains were holding its breath to witness this new moment. Emily Harper awoke, her hair tousled over her shoulders, eyes slightly weary, yet shining with trust and serenity after a long night by the fire and candlelight. Her heart no longer trembled, but was full of hope. Her heartbeat aligned with the steady rhythm of John McCabe, standing by the fireplace, holding a steaming cup of tea. John looked at Emily, his gaze gentle yet sharp, conveying a clear message that she was safe, that he would remain by her side through any storm or challenge ahead. Emily smiled softly and stepped closer, feeling the warmth from the cup of tea and the steady presence of John. No words were needed. His presence alone conveyed protection, tenderness, and genuine care. Breakfast was simple, but comforting: golden toasted bread, some cheese, and hot tea. John set the food on the table, his eyes following Emily, allowing her to enjoy it naturally without any pretense or hesitation. Emily took a slice, savoring each bite, warmth spreading from her mouth to her heart, blending with the trust newly blooming within her. She smiled softly, her eyes reflecting gentleness and happiness. In that quiet moment, the two began naturally tying the bonds of their affection. Emily shared her thoughts, small worries, from the days she had felt lonely to future hopes she had never dared to speak aloud. John listened without interruption, his calm eyes full of care. Every small gesture, placing the tea, adjusting her blanket, lightly stroking her shoulder, spoke volumes. He was here always attentive, always protective. Emily felt John's genuine care not through promises, but through simple everyday acts. She closed her eyes for a moment, inhaling deeply, warmth spreading through her body, all the tremors of the previous night melting away. For the first time in days, she felt peace, not only from physical safety, but from being valued, seen, and loved. John spoke gently, voice low, but reassuring Emily, "Today we begin again. No more fear, no more worry. Just us and the peaceful days ahead." Emily looked at him, her eyes glistening with hope, smiling, sensing the budding yet steadfast affection threading between their hearts. They cared for each other in simple yet meaningful ways. Emily set the breakfast table, John poured the tea. Emily wiped the table, John tended the fire. Each ordinary action was filled with attention and trust. These small, shared moments strengthened the bond between them, building trust and closeness naturally, gently, and profoundly. The morning sunlight streamed through the window, highlighting Emily's hair and John's calm face, creating a romantic, gentle tableau. Emily felt her heartbeat synchronize with his, each subtle throb full of significance. This moment marked not just a physical connection, but an emotional one, where two hearts began learning to trust and love. John gently took Emily's hand, his gaze steady but full of affection, and Emily felt complete safety. She leaned into him, warmth spreading through her body, each breath harmonizing with his heartbeat, creating a shared rhythm, the rhythm of trust, hope, and budding love. Breakfast ended in quiet, yet filled with emotion. No words were necessary. Their glances, gestures, and mere presence conveyed the affection and trust newly formed. Emily looked at John, her heart full of warmth, realizing that this moment was more than an ordinary morning. It was the beginning of a new journey, a journey of building trust, intimacy, and love in the wild western plains, amid storms and the radiant dawn. Finally, the morning sunlight bathed the cabin, the fire radiated warmth, and the two stood side by side, hands clasped, gazing out over the pale, misty meadow beyond the window. This tying of affection, gentle, peaceful, romantic, marked a turning point in their relationship, opening the door to hope, emotional closeness, and love blossoming regardless of any trials that lay ahead. Part 9. Gentle Resolution of Conflict. Early morning sunlight filtered through the old wooden rooftops of the small western town, yet the air remained heavy with the residue of the recent storm. The sound of hooves echoed along the dusty road, signaling the arrival of Sheriff Thompson and a few curious townspeople. They approached John McCabe's cabin, where Emily Harper stood close to the door, eyes anxious, yet filled with trust in the man standing steadfast before her. The sheriff halted, his gaze stern on John. "McCabe, you've done enough. She cannot stay here permanently. The town has rules, and we cannot let this continue." His voice was both firm and cautionary, but in his eyes flickered a hint of helplessness as he looked at Emily, standing small yet resolute behind John. John drew a deep breath, stepping slowly forward, his gaze gentle yet unwavering. He bore no resentment, spoke no harsh words, yet each step carried the weight of honor and conscience. "Sheriff, I understand the town's rules, but sometimes the law cannot dictate what is right, what is just." He said, his voice low but commanding. "Emily Harper has done nothing wrong. She only seeks a safe place and I will protect her." Emily stood close, lightly holding John's hand, her gaze on the sheriff, but without fear. Her trust in John had been fortified through the nights by the fire by candlelight and through the moments they shared. She knew that John was not only her physical protector, but also her steadfast emotional support, the one she could rely on to face any challenge. The sheriff furrowed his brow, scrutinizing John, but when he met John's calm, resolute eyes and saw the gentle affection directed at Emily, he realized that the true strength here came not from guns or laws, but from courage, protection, and humanity. A few townspeople behind him fell silent, recognizing that sometimes justice and kindness are stronger than prejudice or rigid rules. John stepped closer, shielding Emily from their scrutiny, his hand lightly resting on her shoulder. No words were needed, yet the world seemed to hear the message. "You are safe. I am here." His gentle gaze, paired with a strong yet non-imposing presence, softened the rigidity around them. Emily looked into John's eyes, feeling her heartbeat synchronize with his. Her heart overflowed with trust, hope, and peace. She knew that no matter how skeptical or prejudiced the townspeople might be, she was no longer alone. John's protection, tenderness, and courage were her anchor, allowing her to stand strong against any challenge. The sheriff sighed and finally nodded. "McCabe, I do not agree, but I respect your decision. Ensure that nothing happens to her." The townspeople quietly withdrew, still curious, but unwilling to intervene. The tension melted, replaced by relief and hope. Emily exhaled, gripping John's hand tightly, her eyes filled with gratitude. They stepped into the cabin where the fire still crackled, creating a private sanctuary amid the harsh world outside. In this peaceful moment, Emily felt the power of courage, justice, and humanity, the strength that had given her hope and a peace she had never known before. John looked at Emily, his gaze calm, yet full of tenderness. "We've overcome the challenge, Emily. Whatever comes next, you will never be alone." Emily smiled, feeling safety radiate through her body and soul. For the first time in many days, she felt absolute peace, knowing that love, empathy, and kindness could triumph over prejudice and social pressure. This gentle resolution was not merely a victory over rigid laws. It was a testament to courage, trust, and fairness. Emily stood close to John, feeling the steadiness of his heartbeat, knowing that together they had faced the challenge. The new hope blooming in their eyes promised peaceful, safe days ahead, filled with love. Part 10. Conclusion. The gentle afternoon sunlight filtered through the cabin window, casting warm, shimmering patches across the old wooden floor. Outside, the vast meadow lay peaceful, with only the soft whisper of the wind and a few lone birds perched on branches. The small cabin where two people had endured stormy nights and trials had now truly become a home, a space of warmth, safety, and hope. Emily Harper sat beside John McCabe, her tousled brown hair catching the sunlight in soft highlights, her eyes gazing at him with tenderness. John rested his hand on her shoulder, his eyes calm, yet filled with love. The space was silent, yet far from cold. Every small detail, the steady rhythm of their breathing, the lingering glow of the fireplace, the faint wind outside blended into a profound sense of peace. Words were unnecessary. Their presence alone spoke volumes. Emily leaned into John, feeling the strength and steady rhythm of his heartbeat, sensing the protection, tenderness, and kindness she had sought for so long. Every small gesture from John, placing his hand over hers, to the gentle exchange of glances, carried a message they had weathered the storm, overcome prejudice, and could now begin a new journey together. The stormy days, lonely nights, and conflicts with the town seemed to recede, giving way to tranquility, love, and the triumph of kindness. Emily felt with clarity that this space, the small cabin, the sunlight, the peaceful meadow, was where she was healed, where her heart was filled with trust, hope, and genuine affection. John held Emily's hand, gently gazing out over the vast meadow ahead. "We will face everything ahead together," he said, his voice low, but full of certainty. Emily smiled, warmth spreading through her body, feeling that love and kindness had triumphed over everything, the storms, the loneliness, and the prejudice. In that moment, she knew that for the first time in many days, she was truly at peace and safe beside a man both strong and tender, protective and empathetic. The cabin was perfect in its gentle silence. Every ray of sunlight, every soft breeze, every crackle of the fading fire harmonized with the rhythm of their hearts and breaths. Emily looked at John, her eyes filled with love, and her heart overflowed with the trust that even in the harsh western plains, love and kindness could find a sanctuary amid storms and solitude. The story closed, opening a future full of hope. Emily and John stood together hand in hand, looking out over the peaceful meadow. They were no longer afraid, no longer alone. Instead, there was peace healing and love budding, nurtured by kindness, empathy, and steadfast trust. It was proof that in the harsh western plains, sometimes all it takes is one steadfast person, one sincere heart, and one gentle act to create an enduring shelter for love and life. In the harsh western plains, love and kindness are the only true shelter. Leave a comment and rate it from 0 to 10. Subscribe and tap the bell so you won't miss the next ride.